Hi, everybody. Welcome to Inside Scoop with Sue. Today is really fun for me. I'm interviewing Samantha Skey. She's the CEO of She Media, which is a New York City-based women's media company. And if you don't know it, you should check it out. It's quite fun, and she's quite fun. And it's really exciting because we at Your Teen are one of their partner companies, and it's just been a tremendous gift to Your Teen. We're so grateful for the relationship with you and giving me a half hour today. So that's amazing.
Yes, it's my pleasure. And our team loves working with you guys. You're just a wonderful content platform for parents.
Thank you. Thanks. Okay, I want to start with, you are a working mom. And I would say that all of us are working moms, no matter what we are doing, whether we are out of the house or in the house. We don't own our own time. We are really pulled in so many directions. But you are in the public eye. You are a CEO. You're the boss. So it made me think, well, growing up, like, were you ever called bossy?
Yes, I think I was often called bossy, and it was it was in the 70s, 80s. It was a pretty specific insult, a very leveled typically against girls, and often those of us who spoke a lot, who spoke with pretend authority. I think we were all the bossy bosses, and it probably had some impact on how I behave today.
Well, okay, so that's my next question. Did it change you in a good way, or did you kind of reduce yourself to not be called bossy?
I think well, I'd say in reality, I don't know that I could control terribly well my impulse to get involved, to sometimes tell people what to do or state my opinions strongly. That's pretty endemic. But I always took bossy as an insult, and a kind of embarrassing insult, because it was not like saying you're mean. Or I don't know, other insults would probably also wound me, but bossy's pretty specific. It's like, you talk too much, you take up too much space, you're obnoxious, you're too much. So sometimes I think in my business, I'm aware of that and try to embrace it. In other ways, I recognize it and try to temper it. The latter's probably useful sometimes.
It's a rough one because it's something about like our mere presence, right? It's not like, it's like how you walk into the room can be perceived as bossy, and it's not a word used for men. It's
No,
singularly used for women.
no.
Okay, I want to put out there for people who are watching, if you have any questions for Samantha, put them in the comments and we will get to them. The next thing I want to talk about is, so you have two kids.
Yes.
And one of the things that gets put out there a lot, I think it's kind of like the question of the hour, is, how do you find balance? And so what I want to know first is there any reality to this question? Is it aspirational, or is it just off?
I think I mean, if anyone knows how to find the elusive balance, I would love for them to let me know. I think balance is often positioned as sort of the ideal state of being. What's the opposite? The opposite is imbalance, which is, could be, falling off a balance beam, or it could be mental illness. It could be a lot of things that are undesirable for most of us. So I don't subscribe to the idea that balance is nirvana. I think it's unattainable in that way, in the way that it's envisioned by most. I don't have balance, I don't think, in the way that we contemplate balance aspirationally. I have, at moments, I integrate. I think I absolutely adore my children and respect, appreciate them. They're sometimes completely horrible, but I feel extremely blessed to have them. And I think they're fascinating and genius, and all the things that we think about the people we love most. I also love my job. I adore my friends, and I feel really lucky to have the friends I have and to have a really supportive partner. So I have an embarrassment of riches that will never be in perfect harmony. I could never spend as much time with those passions as I'd like. But I think that what I focus on and I'm trying to improve on is attention, and whatever zone I'm in, to really paying attention, being present, um, being intentional. And that is elusive to me, but that feels attainable, to take the time when you're in the job, when you're with the offspring, when you're having a martini with friends, and really be there, not being on your phone and in your head. So that would be my form of nirvana, would be to really recognize the zone I'm in and appreciate it.
I love that answer. I love the pivot from like, why do we keep harping on this other thing that
Mm-hmm.
we don't even know how we could ever get it? It's
Mm-hmm.
just not possible. But the other part of that question is that, again, only women get asked it.
Yes,
So
it's
what do you think the underlying, like, I wonder, is the underlying question, are you a good mother?
I think it's absolutely the underlying question. You hear that question sometimes asked of men nowadays, because we've kind of gotten the memo that that it is a typically leveled as a judgment against moms, women, but I'd say moms in particular. And I think it's a way of setting you off balance, saying like, how do you achieve balance? Do you find that you're there for your kids? Um, do you find that you can really, own the C-suite when you have kids? And sure, those things can be challenging for anybody who has multiple passions, whether those passions involve children, parents, friends, painting, whatever your passion might be. How do you give your time and energy to all those things? So I think that question is very specifically targeted at mothers. And you could say that it's sort of a patriarchal reminder that we're imposters in the C-suite. And it's a really effective passive aggressive way to make moms feel like bad moms, and to make them feel like their selfishness in pursuing business success is unnatural. So I think it's a shitty question. Am I allowed to curse? No.
You are. We invite you
Okay.
to. We're going to even ask that question.
I think it's a shitty question, but it's asked by non-shitty people, because I wonder how people find the time also. Any person I know who has myriad passions, who's so fortunate to bring that enthusiasm to the table and to their life, like how do they decide what to do? How do they decide where to spend their time? But it's the way that question is used is it's kind of weaponized sometimes.
I think by both genders. Like, I think women
Yes.
ask it also, and I think that the question for women is a little more of a, if I made a different decision,
Mm.
then like,
Yep.
it's just kind of like off unsettling to think that you
Yeah.
could do it all. So I want to
Yeah.
hear from you. Either give me the tips, like tell me how to do this, or like that maybe it doesn't work as well as you think.
I think that's true. And I think it's fair for me at my in my increasing wisdom or awareness, to recognize that I often will, in a not my best self way, judge women who have chosen not to work in a formal office, or to be employed by a corporate entity or what have you. I think, God, how are you not so bored? I don't say that out loud, but I might think that, and
Well, you
that's
just did on. You
yeah.
just
Oh
did.
shit. Like that's but I might think, are you sacrificing something? And
Right.
that's not fair either. That's also a bias, a judgment, and I think also a way for me to feel better about the things that I feel like maybe I've sacrificed. So I don't like the pitting of women against women that so often happens, because again, we're forced to feel bad about one or the other. We're forced to feel bad about not succeeding or advancing or dominating in the workplace, and we're judged for not running a domestic bliss, and being sort of really, really excellent parents who are on it all the time. So I think women can be set up to for friction in that zone.
Yeah, no, that's amazing, because the truth is we're coming from a place of fear and worry, and it's not, I mean, we're set up that way. We are
Mm-hmm.
entirely, as a society, set up that way to feel less about ourselves, and we're all feeling that way. It's so
Mm-hmm.
like the ability to kind of ask the question without having an
Right,
underlying goal, because
right.
I'm really curious, is
Yeah, I
that's
think
where we should get.
curiosity
I'm
is a
really
great,
curious.
yeah, finding yourself curious, I think, is a great way to diffuse judgment. Instead, to contemplate someone's choices as like, gosh, I wonder how that, what they feel they might lose or gain, or how we make these choices. Each of us, because I think we all doubt our choices. Humans, maybe I wouldn't say it's just women, but we doubt whether we're making the right choices. And there's the otherwise, why would we so often reference like, what will you think on your deathbed, which is a really grim way to think about how you're living your life, but to say like, no one on their deathbed regretted blank. So to live our lives as if we're trying to forestall some regretful experience on our deathbed is a lot, carries a lot of self-judgment. So but I think curiosity is a great antidote to judgment.
Okay, how old are your kids?
My daughter is 16. My son is 12.
So you entered into this space that is our sweet spot,
Mhm.
and I did notice that you rock climb, and which is fantastic. I think
Yeah.
it's fantastic, but I live in fear when my kids are rock climbing. So I wanted to know, like, what is that someone who will take the risk? And I think you and I spoke before, and you said
Mhm.
you do high intensity sports and you take
Mhm.
these risks. So how do you parent these kids, like, around the activities that many of us are terrified our kids will do and that you're doing?
Yeah, I am so much more scared that my kids won't take risks than that they will take risks. And in general, I'm much more concerned about them taking risks in their classroom, or their educational opportunity, or their friendships, or putting themselves out there, trying for things they're not going to get necessarily, fear of failure. That whole host of risks is so much more concerning to me than them breaking in a limb. And I think that might be something about my generation or my specific demographic of parents, that we tend to be really precious and like put walls around our kids' physical well-being, because it's something we can control. So I love zone sports, zone activities where you really get into, rock climbing's perfect for this. So are plenty of ball sports where you really are in the moment. That's to me the greatest kind of catharsis. My daughter is a really good rock climber, and my son jumps off of anything. And it's scary. I mentioned to watch my son who surfs, watch him in the enormous waves. And I have great respect for the ocean's power, but I'm glad he's doing it. And if I can't watch it, that's on me. I'll go somewhere else. But no, I think that physical, athletic risk is fundamental to my own growth, and I'm thrilled when my kids adopt the same.
I remember Sarah Blakely, who founded Spanx,
Mhm.
saying that her dad would ask her every day what she did to fail. And
It's a really good way to phrase it. Yeah.
like, what I thought is, with the same thing that you're talking about, it allows you to, be an entrepreneur. Like, it allows
Right.
you to go out and be the CEO of a company, because you've learned that failing isn't so, like, take the risk. It's not so terrible if it doesn't work
Yeah,
out.
and I think the failure of omission, I would be much more scared of, like the failure to try something. Because I think trying and like seeing that something doesn't work, an outcome that you really wanted, you don't get it. That's either failure, but that's very that feels very binary, to think there's failure and success,
Right.
instead of the outcome wasn't what I wanted maybe, or what I anticipated for today. And to get comfortable with that, and the more you have, the more of those experiences you have, I think the more agile one becomes. And it's something I do say in business a lot, or in my job, is like, I am not worried about you guys or anyone failing, trying something and it doesn't work. I'm much more worried about not trying the something.
It's interesting because, you know, we've been asked, like, what's our biggest failure when you get those business
Yeah.
interviews.
I'm asked that so often, right up
And
there with like balance. Yeah.
yeah, well, also, I mean, I also have this feeling like we don't look at it that way, so it's hard to come up with that one because
Yeah.
we look at it, I
Yeah.
mean, turn them into an opportunity, right? Like
Yep. I can
every
think of many instances where like I was super bummed about something that I wanted to see happen. I wanted to get something and I didn't get it, or I was rejected. I mean, handling rejection, I would say, is more the language that I would use, but or being like wrong about my anticipation of an outcome. That's like brutal. I'm not suggesting that's easy, but I think considering that an epic fail is different than considering it to be, developing a new muscle.
and hard and just
Yeah,
hard.
and hard. It's
Yeah.
super hard. I'm not suggesting I don't like cry and thrash and think bad thoughts, but
Yeah.
get drunk, like drink too much tequila after those experiences. But I don't think that there is binary as success and failure. And I'd far rather see people try really hard with like sort of unabashed enthusiasm and be wrong.
Okay, so you've said what you worry about is them not taking risk, but like in a
Mhm.
more specific way, when does your mama bear come out?
Oh, if anyone messes with, and this is terrible, I should let them live it, but if anyone messes with my child's confidence, or I feel like their actions, words will cause my child to feel lesser, it's not just mama bear, like some kind of really evil like demon comes out where I want to fix it. I want to, but I also like want to, do harm to the parents of those kids. It's usually, you always blame the parents, never blame the kids. Kids are kids. We're figuring out how, what it feels like probably to hurt people sometimes as kids. But no, if anyone diminishes my kid in a way that hurts their confidence and their image of themselves, whether it's a teacher or another child, that brings out the mama bear. In discussing it with myself outside of the experience, that's not a good impulse or a productive impulse. I think it's really, first of all, the person might not be endeavoring to diminish my child. It's just what the outcome might be. Secondly, that's all part of trying hard and what we're talking about, just adjacent to this question. We're describing that the feelings of whether it's failure or hurt are really fundamental to ultimate flexibility and agility. Then like they should live through those and learn from those experiences. But that if my child's feelings are hurt, confidence is hurt, and it's in some way the result of a interaction with another human, that gets me going.
You say it in such a mild tone, but I'm guessing that's not how you're feeling.
Oh, hell no, 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 no. I'm like, I will tear that. Yeah, I will, it's not pretty. And it's always like, mom, don't do anything. Like, don't, like, what do you think I'm actually going to do? I'm like full of, shit. I'm not going to actually do harm to a 13-year-old or the 13-year-old's totally uninvolved parent. I might, roll up on your teacher, but no, I'm saying it in a mellow tone because it's not happening as we speak.
Okay, so you've done such a nice job of leading up to this next question. I was going to talk about how I found out that you enjoy a well-placed profanity, but you just let us know 3 different times that you were all in. And so what I wondered is, like, as a mom of a 16-year-old, well, maybe 12, but like, how do you teach them that there's a time and a place, and how, like, when is it okay to do it, and
So,
when
yeah.
is it not okay? How
I
do
would
you?
say I'm just not a good example on this front. And that is like, just, I don't claim that there's like a strategic use of profanity in my household, but oddly, my kids don't curse very much. And I have explained to both my kids, but my daughter probably more so, that, early in my career, part of kind of trying to live up to the room that was, where I was often the only, female, was about, sort of posturing and presenting a more macho persona, which included cursing. I mentioned this before, but I've noticed other women in business who are sort of over, say, 45 or maybe 40, who are Gen Xers, will drop F bombs. And it's kind of like we're like, yeah, I get it. Not all of us. There are plenty of clean mouthed, successful people who also identify as women. And good on those guys, but I do find that there's sort of a head fake of like, we get it when you see a successful woman who's 52 maybe and drops fuck in the middle of a sentence, because you're always like, oh man, we're going to be friends. So yes, I don't put a good example forth with my kids, but they often say like, stop cursing. There was a cursing jar that was entirely for me. But I didn't curse as a kid. That's why I think I developed that later, or even wasn't like really a hallmark of mine in college. But yeah, so I do worry about offending people from time to time, but
So there is some research that says people who swear are smarter. I'm gonna go with that, since I
oh
also.
my God,
Yeah.
that's a shocker.
Yeah.
But I'll take it. Yeah.
You got to take what you can get. I didn't dive into the research, so I can't stand behind it. But I'm going to go.
Sure, you can be disproven, but sure.
Okay, so in an interview, you said that the biggest surprise as a CEO is how much you deal with math in business, statistics and analytics. So I want you to like give a message to middle school girls in particular, but just girls all over. How do we send the message that this is not a boys' area, right?
Oh yeah. Well, I think there's been some good work done in sort of advancing visibility of STEM careers and heroes for girls, because that is a marked piece of research around, the dearth of women in certain careers and girls dropping off and confidence around certain subject matter at school. So given that research, so, it was a learning for me. I thought of myself kind of as like a creative or a leader in certain areas, maybe a seller, a marketer, but especially with the advent of data science becoming like really central to media and technology, I think you realize that the math is what drives so much of the decision making. There is this interplay between analytics and creative success that I don't think you have to lead with that as an editorial person, but I want everyone to understand it. And this is something that I often say, and it's sometimes something that I think, my colleagues think is quirky, but I'll sit down with my editorial leaders and say, like, I want you to understand the math. I don't want you to be in a position that many of my friends have been in, where you think you're crushing it as an editor in chief, and then you're being asked to clear out your office because your publication or your TV show or your website isn't covering its P&L. Because it can be, I think it's intentionally been made an area that is separated. The area of P&L is separated sometimes from the creatives. I just, again, don't think this is a binary. You're in your creative space. Maybe you shouldn't be led by, at that moment, your passion. You don't want your passion to be limited by thoughts of profit. But if you can do that math quickly in your head and think like, I can do this series, which I know is not going to make money because it's going to serve a real specific niche and go deep. But with my financial model, that might not be the thing that pays my 100+ employees, but then I'm going to have a healthy diet over here of chips and dip that is also fun content or also fun community experience, but it's not expensive. It does. Journalism's expensive, deep productions expensive. So I want all of us in my industry or in whatever industry to understand the math of the business they're in, whatever it might be. And I like the math. It gives you specific answers. It lets you understand that you're not doing something wrong. It's just that it's more that the economics don't match up.
Well, hopefully we'll do a better job in education to make it connect, because
Yeah.
teaching math in the abstract is so hard
It's
to
just
see
not as
why
interesting.
it's not
Yeah.
interesting. And why do I
Yeah.
need to know this? Right.
Right.
But here you are saying on a day-to-day basis, you are pulling up
Oh, it's
that math.
perpetual. Yeah. I'm pulling it, or it's just in your head. You're thinking, you're getting off a finance call and thinking, okay, I can hire this person over here, or I can do two more junior people here. And I have a really good manager who can train them. And, that's math right there. Because it's, a budget to fulfill a goal, to, grow employees and use the talents that you have in the most efficient way so that people can, can have a healthy, good experience in their jobs, versus, overworking, overwhelming because we haven't distributed our OpEx properly. So yeah, the math is important and can be a really nice foundational component of creative work.
It's a fact. It's just today's fact.
Mm-hmm.
So for mothers of girls, like letting them say, I'm just not good at math. Like,
No.
Okay. So
you don't
soon,
get to be not good at math.
so far are people want to go back to swearing. So
really? Come on.
No, it's good. Sonia, thank you. I love when you make a comment. Swearing is good for mental health. Look at that.
Yay, thank you.
That is great to know. And Jessica, thank you, Jessica. Jessica has seen research that swearing and honesty are related.
Really? God, this is like a good boost for me. I like those ideas.
Swearing away. Okay, my last question for you. I think that we are so hard on these younger generations. I mean, you can find delight in them, or you can rue like all this bad behavior. And there's just so much emphasis on laziness and showing up to work. And I'm just wondering if you're seeing that in your new hires.
I'm super interested in generational behaviors. And so if we're talking about millennials, it's funny because I'm a Gen Xer, squarely in the center of Gen X, and very much identify as sort of the trope there. Millennials, I'm laughing because I think we're envious of some of the millennial hallmarks of sort of, comfort in being really close to your parents, like, the, ability to turn off at 6:00, where I felt like as a woman in business, I had to bleed through my eyes and work until midnight to show I was working that much harder. And so there were moments where we're like, you're welcome, fucking millennials. Which, yes, you're right. That's a slice of honesty there. But I think that there's also a real, in my experience in employing different generations, there's a real sort of enthusiasm and openness and lack of defensiveness that I see often in millennials who've, often been raised by boomers who are, to generalize about entire generations, can be really, really supportive and connected to their kids, where the misanthropy of the Xer is often equated with like latchkey generation and, like rebellion against our parents. Gen Z is fascinating to me. I don't think any of these guys are lazy at all. They are more efficient, probably. They aren't as like visible maybe in their work trials, but I don't think it's laziness at all. Gen Z is going to be fascinating because they grew up with like the end of the world is upon us. And, all of their literature, their YA books are about, dystopia and again, the end of the world. Their movies, they're, hearing about global warming perpetually. There's so much news. They're watching like just a shit show in politics if they're watching it all. So I think that I'm really fascinated by generational differences, but I don't see any universal negativity. I love working with a mix. I love working with women and men who are Gen Xers, boomers, millennials. We do a program called Hatch with Gen Z, so we can learn from them too. there's a lot of things that are very characteristic about Gen X that I would like to undo in myself. So thank God for hashtag blessed by millennials.
That is a perfect ending to our
All right,
conversation. Thank you so much, Samantha Skey. Thank you.
you.
I'm so grateful you came on today.
Of course, it's always a pleasure. Thank you.